So, hello, good morning. So, happy Agricultural Day, and today we celebrate many different things. I mean, agriculture, but it's also a day that the UN is dedicating to the human rights, so we will also represent here the more social dimension of agriculture. And today's discussion really is focused on addressing the urgent challenges, focusing on a model that is regenerative agriculture. And we have seen many panels in this COP28 that have been addressing really regenerative agriculture as a solution to the many challenges that we see. Today, we want to find a definition for regenerative agriculture, but the way we want to find a definition is not through words, through discussions. We want to find a definition by looking at very concrete projects. And one of these projects, one of these iconic projects, is a project about restoration of degraded land, of degraded pastures in Cerrado in Brazil. And we embark in this way in a journey that can really help us understand more the practical implications of such a project, of such an activity. And you are probably familiar with the Brazilian Cerrado. This is an incredible area, 200 million hectares of one unique biome, probably one of the biggest around the world. And it's an area that is balancing very well forests and agriculture, particularly pastures. And so is an area that has probably all the critical characteristics that will help us to understand also the impact that regenerative agriculture can have on the environment, on productivity, on the livelihoods of farmers. So the way we want to conduct this discussion today is really to move from the assessment that has been conducted by Embrapa, that is the major research organization of Brazil, and understand, I mean, the way they are approaching this very biodiversity-rich area with a major also productivity. And then we want to move to the policy discussion. So, and in these policy discussions, we will try to understand if the scientific assessment is also responding in a way to the policy objectives. And then we want also to look and step by step go down to what the private sector is doing to support this approach that is coming from science and policy, to then really distill at the end with farmers what is the impact that this may have on local communities. So this is a comprehensive approach. Feel free to really jump on the conversation. I mean, it's really important, your contribution as well. And before starting the discussion, I would like just to spend a few words about this fantastic panel today. So we have Marcelo Morandi. Marcelo is an agronomist with 20 years of experience and is the head of the Embrapa Advisory Services. And I just said Embrapa is the Brazilian agricultural research company that has been established under the Brazilian Ministry of Agriculture. Then we have Rodrigo Lima. Rodrigo has a background of international law and international economic relations, and is the managing director of Agroicone, and he has about 20 years experience in international negotiations related to international trade, but also to the environmental and sustainable development and agriculture sectors. And then we will ask Eduardo Leao, that has a background in applied economics. He's the CEO of CropLife Brazil, and he has a rich experience in international relations with an incredible knowledge of agribusiness and 20 years experience in dealing with private sector, international organizations, and academia. And then finally, we will have Anna Carolina Zimmermann. She's a production engineer, and she manages the family farm, 800 hectares, with the rotational grazing regime. And Anna Carolina is also an independent consultant, and is a founder of the Brazil Agro Society Environment, and is very active, and you probably have seen her in several panels at COP28, I mean, sharing her experience about Brazil. So, without further delay, I would like just to turn to Marcello, and I think the critical question here, Marcello, is to understand why Cerrado. I mean, what are the characteristics of Cerrado that have pushed really Embrapa to deep dive on this area, and what is the final objective of your assessment?
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Romano, for this comprehensive introduction. It's a pleasure to share this panel with you guys. And so I'll try to start to locate Cerrado on time and place. Yeah. So we are in the tropical belt of the world. The soils in the tropical belt of the world, where Cerrado and Savannah in Africa is located, it's where we have the more acidic and nutrient-poor soils in the world. So this is a characteristic of the Cerrados. Yeah. So it's a low-value land naturally. But on the other hand, it's an area with great biodiversity, rich in water springs and aquifer recharge areas, especially in the valleys and areas with more busier terrain. Yeah. But we have flat relief areas, and we have mechanizable areas. We have good rain distribution. So in the 70s, when we start to make agricultural research in Brazil, the agriculture was concentrated in the south of Brazil, where the fertile lands were. So, but there is no a lot of areas for expansion on that. So we start to thinking about how can we build this new area that have all these characteristics, good characteristics, and some difficulties too, and how could we do that or transform that in fertile areas. So if I can just summary, we did 3 big acts of action to build that. The first one was how to transform acid and poor soils into fertile soils. This was the big question in the 70s, and we find some solutions to do that, to use the soil. The second question was how can we the tropicalization of our cultivars, our plants, because our plants are not tropical, like soybeans, tropical corn, and so on, to go to this new area of production. And then how to develop a platform of sustainable use of this area. So these were the 3 main questions that we followed in the science. So we had the expansion period, we had a competitiveness gain, with these new varieties, new plants and animals that are very well adapted to this new climate. And we have developed these sustainability uh, principles to go to there. So at this period, since the 70s to now, we expanded for uh, more than 140% our area, our cultivate area. But our yield improved almost 600%. So it's almost three or four times more. So this is a way to save land. Yeah, you have the same production in less area. So we can do the balance between production and preservation. So it's land sharing and land sparing principles that we need to use that. And these make us to improve some of our indicators like the cropping frequency indicator. Cropping frequency is the rate of the harvest area over the cropland area. So how many times I can have outcomes from the soil, the intensifications of the soil. And our cropping frequency is 30% higher than the overall world median. So because we have like integrated systems and chains, and we have this possibility to make a second crop on this area. So you can have a really intensification system with land saving. So just to finally my introduction here and to address the question, what has science indicated as the potential pathways for regenerative agriculture in Cerrado? I will highlight just a few basic principles. Yeah, the first one is the soil. So improve the biological, chemical, physical quality of the soil. It means build fertility and keep soil cover. Yeah. Encourage the practical knowledge, integrate with research in all different agricultural models. We don't have just one way to do agriculture that it fit to everywhere, to everybody. We have big areas, we have small areas, we have different crop systems, so we must integrate different approaches of agriculture on that. The use of local and regional solutions according to the available inputs there. So with this, we can reduce emissions of greenhouse gas, and we can improve carbon sequestration on that. And it's very important to the rational use of chemicals, including fertilizers and chemicals. So it's IPM principle, integrate pest management principles. And we have a great use now of biologicals, including not only for pests control, but for biological nitrogen fixations, for improve the resistance of the plants against drought, for example. We have now biological solutions to do that together with the whole management. And it's very important to keep the preserved areas around. So this landscape approach in Cerrado, it's quite important to keep our productive, to keep our yield improving, and to address the questions of our regenerative agriculture, but not the loss of this important sector of our economy, that is the production of food and fuel. This is another question. It's not food versus fuel. It's food and fuel integrated in the same area. So this is really a very good way to approach this regenerative agriculture. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marcelo. Very nice. A very nice description. I think, I mean, it's amazing that you are talking about a 600% increase in the yield and a 30% increase in crop frequency. This is fantastic. And if I understand well, I mean, this is really coming from the convergence of technologies, practices, and knowledge exchange. And clearly, I imagine that this was driving as well enormously the farmer income, that we will probably discover at the end of our session. But now, Rodrigo, I mean, how do you see this scientific analysis and this data responding to the policy objectives, both at national and international level?
Thanks, Romano. It's a pleasure to be here and to engage this Food Agriculture Day at the COP, including Human Rights Day. And I think to have access to safe and good food, it's a human right for everyone, right? So what I will start saying that Marcelo presented the challenges, scientific challenges, years back, decades ago in Brazil to be able to start producing in Cerrado. And now we are here at COP28 trying to address how to improve resilient agriculture, how to build a concept of resilience in agriculture. And we must consider one point that Marcelo brought that for me it's so important. That is, we don't have one model of agriculture in Brazil and imagine worldwide. We have, for example, 141 NDCs comprising agriculture. So we can think about 141 different countries that has challenges and opportunities to improve and to adopt technologies related to agriculture. Because why? Because they don't want to face the challenges of the pressures of climate change. They want to adapt, they want to mitigate, they want to allow producers to be able to cope with the climate change and to strive based on the adoption of practices, the adoption of technologies, services, and so on. And when we think about 141 countries trying to go on and adopting policies, and we are seeing the whole discussions here of the Sharm el Sheikh group on climate action and food security, and I really like the name climate action on agriculture and food security because we need to cope with food security worldwide and with climate action on agriculture being a way to do that. And when we think about those challenges globally, assuming that there's no one size fits all solution, and this is clear, right? We need to have one thing in mind, that is soil. Because a degraded soil everywhere for a project of organic production, agroecology production, to a large-scale maize cotton production in the Cerrado will be a problem for the producer, for the company, for the whole outputs of those different projects, because soil is degraded. So, in my mind, discussing what does this mean agriculture at the UNFCCC and climate smart agriculture or low carbon agriculture, it has to consider soil for every type of agriculture that you want to develop in this region, in this country, in this state, this city, because otherwise, if you don't have soil fertility, as Marcelo mentioned, if you don't have ways to and practices to enhance the ability of the soil to be productive, every producer will face problems. So for me, the number one challenge when it comes to a concept of regenerative agriculture is soil. And what we must do to improve fertility, to restore fertility, and Brazil now, today we will launch a new program to restore 40 million hectares of degraded pasture. Why? Because we have a lot of pasture We have on average 160, 170 million hectares, and there's a lot of degraded pastures. And if we are able, as a country, to channel funding, public funding, private funding, finance, to restore degraded land, we will be able to increase production of whatever products, from livestock to agriculture to biofuels, as Marcelo mentioned, because in Brazil we can do both without damaging food production. There's no food versus fuel in Brazil because we can do the second crop and sometimes the third crop. And again, why we can do that? Because the tropical conditions allows us to do that, and a temperate condition didn't. So what you will do in a temperate country, because you should do different things there, different practices, different technologies. So there's no one size fits all. And if countries at the UNFCCC pursue ways to really tackle their challenges, and this is what is at stake at the Sharm el Sheikh group right now, and fortunately we will be able to evolve in the next years, to be able to improve this vision of regenerative agriculture as a solution to climate change and to food security, but never considering only climate change. We need to consider food security together, because otherwise we will not achieve a human rights approach, we will not achieve a just transition approach, we will not achieve the SDGs broadly. We will only achieve one or two SDGs. And I don't feel comfortable with this. We need to achieve all of them together, thinking about the different challenges each country faces. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rodrigo. This is actually a journey in the journey, because Rodrigo was starting with the access to food, the access to nutrition, and looking at soil as the ultimate solution. So soil health and fertility as the instrument that we need to satisfy these important human rights. But he was also talking about an holistic approach. So quite often in agriculture we are confronted with a number of new orthodoxies, new very rigid approaches, but he's talking about an holistic approach that is looking at everything we can put together to focus on the clear objective of fertile soils. And he was mentioning a number of approaches that accompanied the development in Cerrado, from conservation agriculture to climate smart agriculture, now to regenerative agriculture. And we can learn, I mean, these are all step sisters. I mean, we can learn from all the elements, but I mean, the important thing is that we look clearly at the final objective, because the final objective is what is delivering ultimately satisfaction for an important right, for food security. Now, I think, I mean, this is developing, I think, quite well, and it's time to look at what is the role of the private sector, and is there a role for the private sector in the future of Cerrado? But if I'm not wrong, Eduardo, the private sector was already there some time ago, developing a number of great initiatives, supporting farmers as well in the implementation of the Forest Code. Can you help us again with perhaps another journey in the journey to understand a little bit what was the role of private sector in supporting farmers in delivering all this?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Romano. Thank you for the invitation for this panel. It's very good to be here talking a little bit about this, what you call this journey, because I really believe that we are talking about something that started some decades ago, as Marcelo Morandi mentioned, but we have lots of lessons learned from which you have to look ahead on how to move forward. And this journey, as Marcelo mentioned, it started actually 4 decades ago, something like that, 4 or 5 decades ago. And one of the major, from my perspective, uh, uh, game changer in this process was uh, to understand how to produce in a soil that was considered very poor, acid. And one of the major game changers on that was limestone. So the limestone made it possible to reduce the acidity of the soil and make the soil more productive. Also, Marcelo Morandi was very modest, not telling about the role of Embrapa in this process. Embrapa was crucial in the development of new varieties adapted to new regions, the new frontiers in the agriculture in Brazil, first in the Cerrados. Uh, and, uh, and since then we have had a very interesting story in terms of improving productivity. As Marcelo mentioned, we are talking about 3, 4 times increase in productivity. And this is very important when we talk about the necessity of increasing supply of food, renewable energy, uh, fiber, and without without having the expansion of land. So this has been a very interesting process, and I understand that this was a combination of many factors. Uh, I would point out 4 of them. One, the development of management, especially adapted to tropical regions. And with this, I'm talking about the no-tillage, for instance, no-tillage production, crop rotation, the integrated crop livestock forest systems, and this made it possible for the increase of productivity with conservation measures. Uh, the other important aspects to this advancement, I would say the technology, capacity building, and fourth, the digital systems agriculture. For instance, the connectivity that made it possible to bring information, to bring data, to bring connectivity into the equipment, soil mapping. All of this also made it possible to also increase the productivity with conservation measures, because you have a better use of the inputs, better use of fertilizer, better use of pesticides, so on and so forth. But what I would like to address a little bit more and elaborate a little bit more is about the technologies. So this was for sure a game changer in this process, and more the producers, especially in the Cerrado, have a combination of technologies that can be used, that are in the shelf, and that can be used depending on the situation. So they have chemical pesticide, they have biological pesticide, they have biotechnology, and they have seed improvement that can be used in different ways. Sometimes, sometimes it can be used to substituting, sometimes can be used in combination. So this is something that has been more and more on the hands of the producers. The biological, for instance, it was mentioned by Rodrigo and by Morandi, is something that has increased a lot in Brazil. Just for you to have an idea, in the last 4 years, there was an increase of 60% in the use of biologicals. 60%. This is 4 times higher than the use of biologicals in the world that increased 15%. So this combination has been very important in terms of uh, productivity and uh, which means less need of land and also uh, reducing price, because when you have productivity, you have the reduction of production costs and direct impact in terms of food prices. So this is, from my perspective, the major factors that allowed the Cerrados to increase the production without increasing in a proportional way the land use. Just to conclude, I think that something very important as well is the public policies. So you have the role of private sector in providing technology, but you also have something that was addressed by Rodrigo, which is public policies that create the environment, enable the environment to more sustainable practice. We have in Brazil some specific government plans that provides incentive for the use of technologies with the reduction of carbon emissions. Uh, that is something that has been more and more addressed by the government. So with that, I stop here and we'll continue afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Eduardo. And I think you really helped us to look in a different way at agriculture. I mean, quite often we tend to think about agriculture like it was several years ago. Perhaps many of you grew up on a farm or as a more direct rural experience. And sometimes we tend to believe that agriculture is still what it was 20 years ago. It's not. It is changing every day, and in the very recent years, technologies and understanding of the elements that are part of this world changed dramatically. 2 years ago, we discovered how to detect all the soil biota and to use it, to leverage it. And this is transforming completely the opportunity to work with agriculture. So when Eduardo is referring to technologies, practices, capacity building, this is a completely new package that is enabling farmers to deliver in a way that is completely different from before. But he was also mentioning something very important. I mean, we talk a lot about the transformation of the agro-food systems. But I mean, we have also an enabling environment. So how do we go with the transformation of the enabling environment? How policy is following as well this transformation? How regulatory system is supporting this transformation? So we have several different elements. We have a puzzle that we need all to contribute to put together. But I mean, this is also important because in many cases we see that, I mean, we talk a lot about innovation, no? But I mean, there is something here in this discussion today that is also talking very much about tradition. I mean, when agriculture started, this was made of crops and livestock. And today in Cerrado, we are discovering that converging again crops and livestock is an essential element to bring a very degraded land, a very acid soil, back to fertility. And it's not by chance that we have today Anna Carolina, that is also running a huge family farm with a very important convergence of livestock and crops as well. So, Anna Carolina, how all this reflects on the economy of your farm and overall how this reflects on the livelihood of your rural community in Brazil?
Thank you, Romano, for having me. It's very interesting because Cerrado is the story of my life. My dad was from the south, so our family, like Zimmerman, is German, so we have been for generations in the south, and we have the typical story. He didn't have much money. He studied. He was one of the first to go to university, and he came to Cerrado for looking for better opportunities. And it's funny because whenever we think about Brazil, we think everything is close, but we don't have notion about the scale. But coming from there to from the south to Cerrado is actually going from Moscow to Portugal. You know, it's like huge distance, and it's quite interesting because we've been so we had this we still have an input company, and we started with crops. In fact. The farm that we just had about cattle is pretty new. Our main business is really the cropping part, and it changed completely. We've been doing that since 2000, and it changed completely. So Embrapa was one of the main actors in terms of Brazil was like within 30 years we were food importers and then we became food exporters, and that was due to technology, innovation, science, and that's the story of our lives. It changed how that region worked. In fact, some of the governments right now we have a higher DGP per person per capita than São Paulo, for example, and that's also due to agribusiness. With that in mind, also it's impressive how the fertility in soil changed, and we had the opportunity to have some people coming from abroad to check because they thought it was not good enough, or you know, we just brought them because we have so many bad narratives about Brazil. So we just said, like, you know, come to have a look, and then you can say your own perspective. So they were impressed with the amount of biomass and dry matter we had on the soil. We've been doing no-till for several years. We've been doing cover crops for several years. In fact, we were actually selling Sudanese grass seeds because they were supposed only to be cover crops, but we could also still sell them and be profitable for us, for other neighbors. And it's really what Eduardo said about the ABC plan is the low carbon agriculture plan in Brazil. We have a few initiatives, a few practices we do. I would also add irrigation. Right now, we also have irrigation in our farm, and we do also have intensive termination, which means we can do more with less. And it's also funny because whenever we're thinking about the global context, we think that intensification is a bad thing, that we're putting more pressure on the planet. In our case, it's the other way around. We had degraded pasture. The more we care about the pasture, the more we're putting inputs, we're taking care as if it was a crop. We can intensify, we can take the animals earlier to the abattoir, but we can also regenerate the environment. So it's really a matter of context, really matters. We need to take into account every specific context. We need to take into account a different biome. It's very different Cerrado than the rainforest, than what's happened in the south of Brazil. And I'm really glad we have the opportunity to talk about Cerrado here as well, because even though I love the rainforest, Brazil is not only the rainforest, right? In fact, lots of the food comes from Cerrado. And also, you've asked about the importance of farmers' organizations in that sense. I'm also part of the World Farmers Organization, the Gymnasium program. Julie is here to bring us with the WFO Young, right, or the next generation of farmers. And I'm also part of the CNA, the National Confederation of Livestock and Agriculture in Brazil. We have a commission of new leadership as well. I was just in a panel there. And I think it's very important to say that we should keep organized in terms to having a voice, to have advocacy, to co-design policy making, as you said, because it needs to be tangible. If we're just talking in COP without context, just pointing fingers at each other, not bringing our narratives, nothing's going to happen. We have three major challenges. We have climate crisis, we have energy, we have food security, and we as farmers, we want to be part of the solutions because we already are. So we also need to be included in this decision making. And I'm very grateful for this whole ecosystems we're having with the private sector, with research, with governments. And I think the more we do this, the more we dialogue, the more we can have better ecosystems in order to thrive.
Thanks, Anna Carolina. I mean, it's again a little bit a journey in the journey. I mean, because it's a family journey that is made of passion and sustainability, and that was driving your family to success. But as you said, I mean, you are producing now more from less, and you are also supporting in a tremendous way food security for your country and for the entire world, because Cerrado is really one of the critical production areas that is supporting food security. And you also said, I believe you said, I mean, it's not always easy to talk about Cerrado, because Cerrado is obviously telling people about a number of issues, about deforestation, about how difficult it is sometimes to manage intensification of productivity and protection of natural resources. But I also learned from you that that journey was successful. So probably we also need to change the narrative. And we need to look at Cerrado as one of the inspirational experiences that are telling us that it's possible to restore and to produce more. And I think, I mean, this is honestly my learning from this panel and from the regenerative agriculture approach. I just want to make a small stop here to see if there is any emerging question, really important question from the audience to, please, go ahead. Okay, do you have a mic? Okay.
Hi, I'm a sixth generation farmer from Australia. My question is, how can we justify this constant investment to increase production when we haven't addressed the food and fibre waste that exists? It's a big issue. I'm a merino wool producer. Fast fashion or fashion in general is contributing to 10% of the world's emissions. It's a major issue, so microplastics. We're trying to reduce fossil fuel usage. My family have seen the adoption of innovative technologies, fertilisers, transport, communication. We've also seen the degradation of our land dramatically. So we lost all of our trees due to ecosystem breakdown. In the last 40 years, we've managed to regenerate our property. We've gone from less than 5% tree cover back up to 23% tree cover. And it's the first time in the last few years we've started to see natural regeneration occurring again. So again, how can we justify this constant investment? So it's about investment in increasing production when we haven't addressed food and waste problems. So maybe we should be reconsidering where the investment is going, where the energy is going.
Thanks a lot. Any other critical questions? Otherwise, we revert to the panel, and perhaps together with answering this question, can you also, there is another one?
Yeah. Can I? Oh,
Oh,
hi.
please.
Yes, I just came from Water Ministerial. This is the first time that water, they've made a connection between water and agriculture and food. We know, those of us in agriculture know that, but there's a ministerial taking place right now to really try to link them. So I just want to know what ideas, how does water fit into regenerative agriculture? What's the relationship? Is Brazil also looking at investing in more water management tools and practices?
Thanks a lot. So, then, waste, water, and if you can, just a breath about what we do as well to accelerate this process. Because, I mean, we are all working in the same direction, but perhaps we can push this forward a little bit faster. Anna Carolina, you want to start, please?
Sure. Let's start with the waste. We had a previous panel about circular economy as well. And I think we're doing good in that sense because lots of the things would be waste, they're becoming byproducts. So for example, we can also use energy to have like sugar and energy at the same time. We can have biomethane. There's even like tractors now that can run with biomethane. It's just a start, but I feel we're going to that direction. And I wouldn't say we're increasing, we're just putting money on investing in productivity, but we're also investing money on this circular economy as well. About your question about water, what I can say is that we built a dam 2 to 3 years ago, and our biggest water is abundant in the planet. The problem is the water that is potable, right? So our strategy is to keep water into the continent. So that's how we need to do also responsibly. So a dam is one way. Precision agriculture is very important. So whenever using irrigation, we need to be very responsible in water management to understand where is the right time. And we have lots of challenges, including energy and having access, because sometimes in rural areas you don't have always like that. And also, I believe no-till is very important in terms of water, because whenever you have the no-till systems, you stop having erosions, you keep the soil moisture in there, you keep even the micro environment changes. So I think those three, precision agriculture, irrigation, data, and no-till, they're like fundamental for that. Oh, and in Brazil we also have permanent preserved areas. By law, we need to have an amount of vegetation near bodies of water and rivers and etc. We don't earn any money out of it. We can lose money if we don't do it, but that's how we also are managing it.
Thanks a lot, Anna Carolina. I don't know, I mean,
I would like to say
Marcelo.
something. We had the, the change was the investment on science for agriculture, and this was a public and private partnership on that, because we, as a public research company, uh, develop develop technology, but the farmers put on the ground, and the industry make it innovation happen to that. So this was a perfect marriage on a public and private process. Uh, and then all these technologies that Anna cited here, that was developed for the low carbon agriculture plan, it's in fact uh, thinking about adaptation, and we have the co-benefit of mitigation. So when we make these no-till systems, cover crops, integrated system, you are keeping water in soil, you are keeping biological life in soil. So, and this, it's in fact a way to protect crops for a drought period without rain, for example. We have much more resilience on the crops in these systems. And the preserved areas inside the rural farms, like she said about the preserved areas on the side of rivers or on the springs, on the top of mountains, for example, is a way to keep the landscape and the microclimate around the farms working quite well. So this investment was really in science together with the partnership to the farmers to put this on the ground. It was really a successful model to do that.
Thanks a lot, Marcelo.
I would take the opportunity to touch upon the waste and loss and waste when it comes to a broader view of agriculture, to touch upon the use of food and what does this mean, loss and waste upon the use, right? And this is not at the farm level, but this is at the consumer level. And as society approaches, as policy approaches towards tackling this, which I think is extremely important. And again, we don't have one. We need to have a broader view about this because it relates to different cultures and realities and access to cold chain, for example, that it's not a problem for us, but it is a huge problem for a lot of people in the world, and how to handle and to avoid loss and waste when you don't have a refrigerator at home, for example, which is, for us, this is not an issue, right? But it is a big issue. So, of course, different countries, different realities, and so again, we cannot think only with the SDG 13 climate change and climate actions in a broader view. We need to have a whole bunch of SDGs integrated to be able to tackle this food loss and waste. For example, to then get to the on-farm level and how to manage that waste and turn it into biogas or biomethane, for example. And now we are starting to have the machineries run with biogas and biomethane, which is amazing because if you're thinking on only on mitigation, we will be able to reduce more GHGs per whatever you are trying to measure because you are running on renewables as well. So again, it demands a broader view to then get to different policies. But I think as COP28, as a conference of the parties, really to stick to this point on allowing countries to adopt actions that will be able to target those challenges according to their realities, their challenges, and so on. And of course, water. Water is another critical aspect of regenerative agriculture because without a good soil and without water, I don't do anything. I can have good soil, without water, I have a problem. And again, what are the strategies towards improving water? According to each country and region and technological packages that can support, but for sure, water is extremely relevant.
Eduardo, any reactions?
Thanks, Romano. Well, trying to respond to your challenge regarding accelerate implementation. I'd like to bring something very important that Ana Carolina mentioned regarding what all of us, I understand, believe which are the most important challenges of this century. One, food security. We have to feed 10 billion people in 25 years' time. Energy security. We have to provide energy to these people without increasing or reducing the use of fossil. And third, climate change. So these are the major, by far the major challenge that we face in this century. And the three of them have to go hand in hand. You cannot avoid to address all of them together. And you cannot solve these challenges, these three challenges, without looking at agriculture. Agriculture is key in this process. So you have to increase productivity to feed these people. You have to produce energy, renewables energy, to substitute fossil. And three, you have to address climate change. You have to mitigate. You have to adapt the situation. And all of them has to do with agriculture. And I cannot see any different way to do that, not thinking about technology. So I guess the technology is the key word of that, that one, increases productivity so that you can increase the supply of food, of energy, without having to cause deforestation or you have to reduce the need of new land. And you also have to create adaptation to the current climate that we already see the consequences nowadays. And for this to happen, I think that key game changer for that is public policies to enable the technology to flourish. We have to understand the need of the producers. We have to understand the need of the consumers, the need of the environment, and try to develop the technology that addresses all these issues. So that's how I see it.
Thanks a lot, Eduardo. So today we have looked at a broad assessment of an extraordinary area, but very poor from the soil quality, soil health and fertility point of view. That was basically taken as a critical area to support food security in a big country. And we have understood how this scientific project was dealing with the policy objectives of the country and the international policy objectives and the international environmental governance. But also we understood how the private sector was part of this journey since some years and offering clearly technologies, knowledge exchange, and capacity building, also about practices, some of which, have been really defined and consolidated in the last 50 years. Because we have been referring to conservation agriculture, to agroecology, to climate smart agriculture. So everything is coming together. We have seen how this approach is really dealing also with the livelihood of farmers and the need to run a business enterprise, because a farm at the end, is like any other business, so it needs to produce a profit. So we have seen how all this is delivering in terms of our expectations, the societal expectations, in terms of environmental productivity and livelihood outcomes. And that, I think Eduardo said, the farmer needs to look at a shelf where technologies, practices, capacity building opportunities are. And so, this holistic approach is also linked to the fact that he has access to these opportunities as a farmer. And with this, I would like to leave you. I think we are just 1 minute late, sorry for that. But I think this is an important message. There is no new orthodoxy, there is no new rigid model that can work in agriculture. This is a locally adapted approach that is using all the available tools without any sort of discrimination, that is really based on exchanging knowledge. And these are the important message that we need to bring back, and perhaps that we need to continue to tell also to our policymakers, to Rodrigo's point, but always leveraging what science is telling us. So always leveraging the great work of the research institutes that are telling us, how to bring all this together. Please join me in a big round of applause for this fantastic panel today.